Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the full thunder moon in Capricorn, which is occurring on July 10th, 2025 in my time zone, the central time zone in the United States. It's occurring at 3:36 p.m. And if you are in Europe, it should be before midnight, later in the evening. And I suppose those people who are down under, it will be actually on the 11th of July instead of the 10th. I like to call this the thunder moon. I just think it sounds really cool. All of these terms that are used are the indigenous populations in North America, but also from what I understand from almanac.com, that even the Europeans would name the moons too. But the one that they mentioned that they call it mainly is the buck moon. I'm not talking about Europeans, but just from the website I just mentioned. And that's because that's when the deer have their antlers full on. As a matter of fact, even though it's not that time yet, I'm recording this in late June, I saw a deer, a young buck with antlers, and I could tell that he was still quite young, and they were fuzzy. They were kind of like, they weren't sharp like the older ones, because where I live in suburban Chicago, we do get deer, regularly. And there are certain times when they're more active. So, anywho, just wanted to mention that. And also, another thing they talked about is the dog days of summer, which begin on July 3rd. Now, it's interesting because I did research a little bit on different sites, and there were varying dates. If you know anything about the Lionsgate portal, you know that it begins every year on July 26th, and it ends on I think it ends on August 10th, but they were talking about the dog days ending on August 11th, and it is tied to Sirius, the dog star, and the alignment with the sun, and it's the brightest star in the sky, and there's a galactic connection with that. I'm not going to get into all of that. Don't really know enough to talk about it confidently, but I will say that I think that is very interesting because it's supposed to be a very powerful period. But they were talking about on almanac.com starting on July 3rd, but the official Lionsgate portal is on the 26th of July until around, maybe it is the 11th of August. I always thought it was the 10th. Yeah, 1 day difference. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because there are other things going on that can add to the potency of this full moon. Astrologically, I would say one of those things is connected to Uranus going into Gemini, and this is happening just 3 days prior to this full moon. Uranus has not been in the sign of Gemini for over 80 years, and so certainly it is a very significant transit, and it will be in Gemini for years. It will dip back into Taurus later this year, but Uranus is connected to technology and Gemini is connected to information. So we should see, I'm assuming, like even greater strides with technology and disseminating information. I remember years ago seeing that movie Minority Report, and I'm not one of those people that is into science fiction or that type of genre. I think it was Minority Report, and some of the things that they had in that movie. And I don't remember exactly what year it is, but recently I looked it up, and I think it was like, I don't know if it was the 90s, late 90s, early 90s, but we have those already. Drones were in that movie, but something that really stuck out to me was, if this is the same movie, where it was like a holograph, and this was even before iPads or that kind of thing, or phones where we swipe a phone. It was like they were swiping the air, and it was like a holograph. And so it's crazy. It's crazy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have that that kind of thing where we don't even need physical devices to be able to access information. We can just do it etherically. I don't know. I really don't know what that would entail. But as a matter of fact, there are a lot of nice angles between these outer planets, and that to me suggests that the direction we're going in is very positive, and that we are not, but it's interesting because it can still feel unsettling or unsettled because it's all happening at once. That's one of the things that astrologers have been talking about, is that you have all these outer entities like changing signs at one time: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and even Saturn. Although it's not generational, it is almost 3 years, and it's also changing signs, and it's forming a conjunction with Neptune during this time. So that as well. And it's, to me, that particular conjunction suggests that, dreams can become reality. And maybe it's a lot quicker than we would imagine it to be. I think part of the old paradigm is that everything is going to take forever, or that anything of value takes a long time to manifest. And because Uranus is in this sign that is connected to the mind, in other words, Gemini, I think that the things that we can think up, we could possibly manifest them in lightning speed, because we're not bound by the influence of the earth. We have had Uranus in Taurus. The earth is dense, and we like to see planets in earth in terms of feeling that sense of stability, but the trade-off is that it can get stuck in that density, and it has to play the games of that 3D reality. So, when we have planets, I'm talking about the generational planets, we have Uranus in an air sign like Gemini, and Pluto in an air sign like Aquarius. It's like it bypasses the material plane. Also, these are all in masculine signs. So the masculine or the yang energy is very can-do. It's very independent, whereas the feminine is considered dependent. And I would also say that the feminine is very cautious. And this is the reason, and it's not to say, I hope that people don't take that I'm saying, oh, the masculine is better than the feminine. No, I mean, they each have their place. But the fact that we have all this masculine energy means that we are getting out of our own subjectivity, and that is also freeing us to kind of let go of our story, that drags us down. The story being our past, which is an illusion, really, ultimately at the end of the day, because I think this all the time when I think about my childhood. It might as well be a dream, and it is a dream because I can't recreate it, even though I've lived near my hometown my whole life, and I go by, sometimes I'll go by my elementary school. I'll be right there. It's a whole different world, and that was a different time and place. But the thing is, some people drag around, a lot of people do actually, their past, and they can't really create the life that they want for themselves because they're stuck in the past. And I think that these outer planets, I was going to say they nudge us, but I think they really push us to, just shove us into a new paradigm where, we don't have to be trapped by our past experiences, and we can create new experiences. The fact that I think about Saturn is the lord of karma, and karma is merely action, or we could even say like cause and effect. And when it's in Aries, I feel like it's easily shrugged off or easily kind of cast aside. Because when it was in Pisces, my God, it's like the wearing the hair shirt. I had my second Saturn return when it was in Pisces, and actually it's going back into Pisces. So if you have some kind of connection with that, it's making some angle to you, just keep that in mind, that it is going back into Pisces for a while at the end of this year into next year. And so, but the point is that in Aries, everything becomes lightning fast and forward moving. And that is, to me, what is so exciting. Because in order to make progress, we have to be looking towards the future and not be trapped in the past. So if these times feel unsettling, understand that you will look back later on and say, wow, yeah, a lot of change took place in a very short amount of time, and I was in the thick of it. But when you are in the thick of it, it can feel very wobbly. And the third chakra is the solar plexus, kind of the tummy region, when we talk about the butterflies in the stomach. It's called the Manipura. That is connected to our power. And so when outer events happen, it can be very easy to feel powerless over what is happening, and it feels like it's happening too quickly, and maybe personal events in your life are happening that you don't feel that you initiated, that you feel powerless to. And to me, at least, the best way to handle it is to assume that it is going to lead to something really great in your life. That it isn't out to hurt you, that it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And that is a relief sometimes, because I'll tell you, it will probably be a widespread phenomenon with people experiencing major changes in their life during this time that they didn't necessarily initiate. And this is kind of like the eclipse season, although albeit early, but I'm talking about these other transits that are occurring, and the Uranus transit being in July specifically, but also the Sirius connection, I think that is such a powerful influence as well, from what I understand. So all of these things. So I just wanted to bring that up before I talk about the actual full moon in Capricorn. By the way, the fact that this full moon is in Capricorn, we have to realize that Capricorn rules the 10th house in astrology, and therefore it is connected to the authority figures in life. So we could talk about the government, we could talk about the leaders of the governments around the world. And certainly with some of the recent world events that we have, witnessed, there is a lot going on at the moment. Sometimes it feels like the world is on fire. And these leaders are totally tied into that, because either they know that they are going to lose power, or they know that they are really powerful, that their actions really affect more than just their own country. So they can act accordingly. Some people might step down. Some people might, ratchet it up. You never know. But the point is that we have our own personal feelings about authority figures. And I have come to realize that this is a big deal. And the 10th house can rule the father. But certainly the father is not always an authority figure in a child's life. Sometimes a child never even meets their father. Their father might die before they're born, might not be in their life, whatever. Or in and out of their life. So even if a child never meets their father, they may hate that father for not being there, even if their father died. You know what I mean? So there is, people have a lot of issues with authority figures if their father abused them. And like I said, this could be the mother. This could be the grandfather or grandmother, whoever is that authority figure in that child's life who really wields a lot of influence. And the child grows up to hate authority figures because they were abused by one or more of them. And of course, the school system, those are authority figures. We see them in life, the boss and things like that. But we are also our own authority figures. Ultimately, we realize that. The person who is immature keeps rebelling against perceived authority figures. The more maturity the person steps into or acquires, the more they realize that they ultimately are the boss of themselves. And so if they have been self-destructive, they realize, well, that's dumb. I'm just hurting myself. I know I had a strict parent who wouldn't let me do anything and have any fun. So now I'm just like doing whatever, whenever. But that's very reckless, and it's showing up. It's affecting my physical health. It's affecting my mental health. It's affecting my relationships. All of that. So this is going to bring this up for us in one way, shape, or form. Yes, for the collective, we may see some kind of situation because full moons can bring things to a head that is politically connected or connected to a political leader, for instance, that just come up. Sometimes it might be a fall from grace. The 10th house that Capricorn rules is the status of a person. So, or you could say their public reputation. So sometimes that can take a hit. And now what's interesting about the opposition between the sun and the moon, which I'm sure many of you know is what a full moon is, which means the sun is in the sign of Cancer at the same degree, is that we're talking about the father-mother polarity. And this is really a big one because for instance, Christianity, it's always pointed out that the Trinity is the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But there's no talk about the mother. There's the Father and the Son, The Holy Ghost, is the Holy Ghost a woman? I don't know. I don't think so. It's almost like this mystery. But the point is that there has to be a mother. And, someone else, some other spiritual teacher or content creator pointed out that when you have a religion based on the matriarchy or the feminine principle, that's also imbalanced because there's a masculine. So this is kind of like, in a way, I would say the ultimate in exploration of the male-female or the masculine-feminine polarity, because we're talking about the mother and the father, and talking about it from the spiritual perspective. The part of if we look at, if we bring it back to ourselves, the part of ourselves that is very bold, but also the part of ourselves that's very nurturing, not just concerned with ourselves, because the sun is the individual, but the moon is, going to nurture others and care about others, and having that balance, which I think is super important. But again, going back to what I was saying about these outer planets having recently shifted, is that, and, including Uranus right before this full moon, is that they're all masculine signs. So in terms of the collective, it is really bringing us back to the individual. And that isn't a bad thing, because there is a divine masculine, which really is about being the captain of our own ship. It's not about looking at somebody else and telling them what they need to do. It's really about looking at ourselves. And so it's such an exciting shift and time for us, I believe. But it, at this particular point, we're going to have that sensitivity, even though it's coming from the sun position of Cancer, because not only is the sun in Cancer, but Jupiter is in Cancer. Jupiter has just gone into Cancer starting in June. I hope I said Jupiter. Starting in June. And although it's not aspecting the sun at this time, we did just come from a new moon in Cancer on June 25th, and that was the moon event right before that. And this was a new moon event that we could even look at as a catalyst for this full moon. That was on the 25th of June at 4 degrees of Cancer, and Jupiter was, I believe, at 3 degrees. So it was a conjunction with that. And so I would just say, for the individual, you may find that you are manifesting something that started around that time. And that's very exciting because, the themes could point to home and family issues, and whether it is finding an ideal place to live, or being able to conceive children, or your partner being able to, conceive children. I mean, participate in that. And you didn't think it was going to be possible. Another observation is that these are cardinal signs, Cancer and Capricorn. So that in and of itself speaks to change, but also action. And this activates us. So even though this is a full moon and we can think of the harvest period, I still believe this is an activation, and that this is going to carry us, really, you could say, through the rest of the summer. Because we also have at this time Mars in Virgo. Virgo is very industrious. And Virgo is connected to the 6th house, which is the house of work, our health, our daily routines. I think that people are going to find themselves wanting to organize their space and their life. And maybe it's because they are going to be moving. And I'm not saying that you're going to be moving right during this period, but something is being cultivated in the invisible realms, so that when the timing is right, it will present itself to you. And it's interesting because I said the word present itself, and I was actually thinking about the word gift, because we usually present gifts. It's like the universe giving us this gift. And then I thought about the word present, which is another word for gift. But, on top of that, we talk about present moment awareness of like doing what needs to be done in the moment. And I think that is kind of like that Virgo ethos, or the way that Virgo people, or the Virgo energy, sees itself in that positive sense. And that's kind of like when I talk about the daily routines, it's like, okay, these are the things that need to be done. And it just is what it is. It's part of what has to happen. But we don't always do them at the same time, and sometimes they get rearranged because of other things going on. So sometimes we're driven to do things that are very creative and, like imaginative. And sometimes we need to do things that are very practical. And this may be one of those times with Mars in Virgo. Of course, if you have Taurus rising, then you have Mars in your 5th house. And even though it's in Virgo, this is a very creative time for you. I know this because this is me. And so it's a little bit different in that regard, I guess, or a new shade of that. But in any case, I think that this particular full moon is going to transcend just what we would normally look at each month. And I think it's going to be there. Yes, it could be a culmination, but there's so many other things going on at this time that it could bring those things into a greater awareness, bring them to a head, to a crisis point, in some cases to fruition. And the other point that I wanted to make is that the sun and moon are both going to be squaring off to Chiron, which happens to be in Aries. The reason that I think this is very important is because the sun in Cancer is super sensitive. And so when it squares off to this asteroid that is connected with sensitivity itself and due to wounding, that, and the moon as well, is that there can be a lot of hypersensitivity happening at this time. If a person is unaware, and there are a lot of unaware people, and this has nothing to do with IQ either, by the way, because there are people who judge others and they're what we could call bad behavior, not understanding what's really going on there. Because, there's all kinds of videos online that are showing people like flipping out, being, acting rather psycho and stuff like that. But what they're not showing is why that person got triggered. Like what's going on in that person's life. And of course, I'm not saying that this is, going to happen wide scale, with people. But if you notice people snapping at you or being very emotional in some way, maybe telling you that they are having a hard time accepting themselves, it's so important to, tune into them emotionally and not to be insensitive, kind of like just dismissive, because yeah, the emotions are going to be heightened for sure. Squares are very irritating. They clash, and these are in cardinal signs, so it can escalate. Cardinal signs don't just run their mouths. Sometimes they do things, and you don't want people to act out because of their own pain. Venus and the sun and moon are actually well aspected to Mars, so that's good. The one thing that I see is that Venus and Mars are squaring off to one another. So yeah, that could be relationship issues or romantic issues if you're dating someone and something is a little bit off. You seem like you're fighting more than normal. Maybe that's connected to it, but you have to bring it back to the source, because I think with those squares from the sun and moon to Chiron, it's like it's very easy and the fact that the sun is in Cancer, it's very easy for people to feel not so good about themselves. And yes, sometimes they take it out on others, but even when they're just looking for reassurance, they're not necessarily met with that. And that's unfortunate because, it's a great opportunity to be comforting to someone. The sun is trining the transiting north node in Pisces, and I really like this because what came into my consciousness was the idea of reinventing ourselves. Because it's like a simple twist of fate. The north node, when it goes into each sign that it goes into, it can change our lives, change the trajectory of our lives. The nodes are connected to the eclipses, and it's kind of like breaking from that routine or the rut that we have been in and kind of switching things out to a new timeline even. And we don't have to stay on this, course, especially if we think it's a path of destruction. We can kind of say, I'm ready to let that go. And Pisces is a karmic, it's the last sign it's associated with karma, past lives even. So the sun is our current incarnation, who we came to be. So it's an alignment with this harmonious angle, the trine, most harmonious angle, to be who we choose to be and not be bound by karma, but actually maybe blessed by it. Alrighty then, I hope that you enjoyed this and hope you have a great full moon in Capricorn. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.